The PlayStation 2, a legendary piece of hardware that holds many memories and iconic experiences. It's also the highest selling console of all time. It was released in 2000 and gave the world a new device that plays games and movies. It was a two-in-one package for all to witness. But something it also did was create its own world. See, the PS2 created this layered digital void that's meant to be filled with your memories, or your saved game data, which is shown by these pillars. You'll always start up here and continue to descend. If your disc was already inserted and it actually worked, you'll jump straight into the play realm, meaning that you're all good to go. Enjoy your time, go beat up some people and bully or something. If you didn't have a disc inserted or the disc just wouldn't read, you'd be sent to the browser settings realm. But if your disc was really screwed up, and I mean really screwed up, you'd get sent to PS2 Hell, or the corruption realm, as I call it. A place bathed in red, a dead end for your journey, accompanied by a more sinister version of the ambient music. This is just one of the many examples of the lost aesthetics and atmosphere of past technology. We barely see stuff like this anymore. This personality that distinguished the devices we used. Look at the modern home screens and designs of Windows, PlayStation, Nintendo, and Xbox. They're missing a degree of playfulness and identity that earlier iterations had. And that also goes for the company branding and logos. We've entered an era of colorlessness, an era without style, an era of blandness. And that old era we used to know is mostly dead. But in this video, we're going to try to figure out what exactly killed it. To understand where these older aesthetics and designs died out, we should really look at some other great examples and what exactly they did to stand out. We already talked about the PS2, so now let's talk about that brick with a stick, the Nintendo Wii. The Wii did something very special. It focused fully on its TV channel aesthetic. Instead of throwing you into a void like the PS2, here you're more like a normal guy who's just channel surfing. You got your game channels, your Me channel, Weather channel, Wii Shop channel, Internet channel, Wii Fit channel, Photo channel, Subscribe channel. You're presented with a lot of information, but in this simplified and approachable way that immerses you into the Wii's channel-filled universe. The Wii console was designed in the face of this messy, complicated reality to seem simple and self-contained. Its overall emotional design, however, seems to be calculated to invoke an effective response associated with simple fun. That right there, simple fun. What we have now is simple and effective, but it's not fun. The Wii's menus were crafted with the goal to provide an enjoyable and interesting experience for all who picked it up, even if it were just for a couple seconds. The Wii's aesthetics also kind of fit in with every game you played. Going from something like Wii Sports Resort to the home screen felt seamless. I personally found the Wii's UI to have this sort of visual synergy with the games, especially with many of the Nintendo exclusives that are known for their more stylized, cartoony, and lighthearted visuals. And when you factor in how the Wii was advertised to be this fun for the whole family type of console, while the PS3 and 360 dealt with the darker, more realistic and gritty side of gaming, the casual TV channel aesthetic makes a lot more sense for this type of machine. Okay, but now, let's leave your living room and move into a laboratory. Something is being made. The original Xbox, being Microsoft's first foray into the console market, had to make an impression, and this is where a bit of that consumerism aspect comes in. Now of course, people don't buy a game console for its UI, at least I don't think so. But the visual flair of the Xbox being crafted to look like this secret lab was sure to make many children excited to delve into the games. It felt like you were traversing this high-tech interface, fiddling around with this new source of power, that green core. And power is exactly what Microsoft wanted you to feel, especially with the Xbox being the most powerful console of that generation. To sell power, you had to show it, and the console's aesthetics, alongside the games, made this big green box iconic. But not as iconic as their next console, and this one took some aesthetic notes from Frutiger Aero. You've probably seen Frutiger Aero, named after designer Adrian Frutiger, at some point in your life. It's an aesthetic that came out after Y2K, a time where people thought technology would lead to the end of humanity. Instead, Frutiger Aero put a lot of focus on an idealized version of the world where technology and nature coexist in a perfect harmony. You'll see a lot of bubbles, computers, super high contrast grass and skies, sometimes the occasional city. It's a very positive feeling style that encapsulates this futuristic utopia. Now flat Frutiger Aero does something similar with a higher focus on 2D or flat elements, and the 360's user interface mixes standard and flat elements of the aesthetic. Rather than promoting power, the goal here was to establish a constant flow of social connections. We're fully entering the online era, so design-wise, the console needs to reflect that. There's an abundance of the color green, and in addition to it being Xbox's signature color, whether you notice it or not, it works to engage you with the console's social aspects. If you delve into the psychology of the color green, you realize that it has the potential to invoke a variety of different feelings. One that suits the 360's aesthetic quite well is this sense of freshness and purity. A brighter shade of green, which was widely used here, is associated with rebirth, which ties in with a fresh, new console generation. And overall, green is a color that holds a lot of optimism due to its visual connection with things like nature, money, or even a traffic light. Yes, a traffic light, because it encourages you to go, which was similar to the 360 slogan of jump in. Go, jump in, have fun, and socialize.
Hey, listen!
Windows XP's Bliss needs no introduction as it stands out as one of the most iconic visuals in tech history. One photograph from Charles O'Rear made turning on your computer a rather tranquil experience, something that can't be said for Windows 10's default wallpaper. Windows 11 fares a little bit better, but both of these lack something. They're either way too simple or way too bland. Yes, you can change these backgrounds to your liking, but I'm fully focusing on what these operating systems give you by default. In that logo change, now this is also something that's plagued many brands. Similar to user interfaces, brand logos have seen a significant shift in their presentation, with many becoming these super clean and simplified black and white versions of a much more visually distinct design. And this being the case is kind of strange when you realize color actually helps a brand or logo stand out. Compared to black and white logos, fully colored ones are more attractive and more effective in marketing communication. They require more cognitive effort to process and are cognitively associated with lower construal levels. In other words, more colorful and complex logos are much more engaging than just a white square. That's pretty obvious. Now, the construal level is quite important here because it defines how much our brains have to decipher an image. A low construal level means we gotta put a little more work into understanding what the hell we're actually looking at. A high construal level means that things are a lot more simplified. They more quickly give you the gist of the information that's presented. Your brain doesn't have to do as much work. Looking at a logo boils down to taking a quick glance. It's all about being immediately recognizable, and that might play into our attention spans. Look, you don't need me to tell you that as a society, our attention spans have hit a serious low. The existence of TikTok, Reels, and Shorts are meant to appeal to our poor attention spans. I'm guilty of it too, I'm not gonna lie. So think about this from a company's perspective. Why over-design their branding when people won't give it the time? Getting from one thing to the next with little delay is what people want. Give them the gist and keep it pushing. Alongside this, companies may see these old aesthetics as being in bad taste, or in other words, kitsch, a label derived from the 1860s that means cheap artistic stuff. Kitsch art or aesthetics may contain severely outdated elements that could have been accepted at one point in the past but may not work out too well in modern times. Or sometimes it was never good to begin with. Artist Jeff Koons believes that since the 1960s, pop art and postmodernism have blurred the distinction of kitsch and avant-garde art. Today, paintings and sculptures featuring prototypical attributes of kitsch are considered as high art. In other words, everything can change because we constantly evolve our taste, but some of us may still appreciate those older art forms despite general disinterest. Now, I'll be honest, there are several aspects of those aesthetics I mentioned previously that I can definitely see not aging well. Some Fruitiger Arrow pieces can come across as super busy, confusing, and maybe just a little ugly. Listen, I'm looking at this from a business perspective, purely. The oversaturation of some of the colors can look a bit off-putting, and conceptually, some of this doesn't even make any sense. Yes, much of everything here isn't meant to be taken literally or have some sort of grounded context, but if this design was used today for a product, I'm sure at first glance many would write it off as trying too hard or simply looking a bit tacky or cheap. Additionally, the heavily nostalgic nature of Fruitiger Arrow and Y2K aesthetics may serve as a detriment if used primarily in modern technology and branding. People associate these styles with the late 90s, 2000s, and very early 2010s. It's that oversimplicity that hits high construal levels and gets information across the fastest. It's about efficiency. And that's not to undermine the work that goes into these modern logos and interfaces. There's actually a lot design-wise that goes into these, but we can't deny that we've lost the unique feel and atmosphere across each unique platform. Those visuals have, for the most part, faded into obscurity because of our ever-changing standards and expectations for art and technology. And the companies who used to use those colorful and recognizable designs must grow and evolve too, to the new era. But you know, that's okay, because those aesthetics aren't completely gone. A piece of them will always remain. You just have to look for them. They'll be there somewhere.